Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, farm animals, nanas, AI intelligences from the future, welcome to another edition of the Rage Select podcast. I am Jeff, and just like game show host, I am whisking back the curtain to reveal my co-host this week, and it's none other than... Feel free to jump in anytime.
British Nicholas Hodges in the house.
Woo! Nick, calling us from what I'm sure is a much colder than Texas, Britain right now. Do you guys get snow over there? You lucky son of a bitch.
No, actually, it's quite rare. I mean, down in like the north of Britain, then we'll get snow, but I think London just like melts any snow that might pop down. So I think, to be honest, this is quite a mild winter. I've heard that you guys are having some crazy blizzards, though.
Well, not us. I've there have been plenty of days where it's been like 75 and balmy, and I just open my window all day long. Like winter here, we've had two things here in Austin. We've had rain and shit, or like the most beautiful spring day that most everybody else in the world would associate with like the summertime, right?
Did you just say 75 degrees? That's your winter.
Well, that's it's been some of our winter.
Shit, man. You're so lucky.
Yeah. Well, you know, you've been here during the summer. There's a trade-off.
Yes.
There's absolutely a trade-off.
That is true. I've actually only been in Texas during the summertime. So when I think of Texas, I always think about like 100 degrees plus, sweating, seeing mirages out on the highway.
Mm-hmm. People
I never
turning
saw a mirage.
into giant hams, or that's more when you're hungry, I guess. People turning into like soda machines and stuff like that, just like the cartoons.
Yeah, I mean, I never saw a mirage until I went to Austin. It's crazy. I mean, like, it does not get hot enough over in the UK. I mean, like, maybe it'll get hot over in France or Italy, but Texas is like a whole other thing. It's like living on the surface of Mars or the surface of the sun, I meant.
You know, I think I was incredibly disappointed because when I was a kid, you watch cartoons, right? And a mirage is when they see like something absolutely like it's a hallucination. And then when I realized it was just that shimmery shit over there. Yeah, I see that all the time. Is that a mirage? Oh, come on. I thought it was supposed to be like naked bikini girls handing out cups of free water or something. And instead, no, it's just that. But yeah, don't feel too sorry or don't feel too envious because, you know, like I said, we've got 4 or 5 months out of the 8 of the year that are pretty tolerable here. And then the rest of the time, it's just balls hot. It's just balls hot all the goddamn time. And I don't know. I still live here, and it's only because... I don't know. I can't convince everybody that I know to move to another town at the same time. It's like,
But like, how many clothes are you wearing? Are you just wearing a t-shirt and shorts?
Well, I'm inside right now, Nick, so I do the podcasting from where the computer is. But I have the heat turned on a little bit right now because it's a little bit chilly today. But you know what? I'm sure that for all the people who haven't tuned out for this scintillating weather discussion, Nick, it's been a while since I've talked to you. What have you been up to? Give us a recap. I love it. I love when you're on the show, Nick, because it's so infrequent. It's like I see Grant 6 times a week, so I have Grant on the show, and we look at each other like, "Hey, what crazy shit did you do last week?" He's like, "Nothing, man. I was over here. What about you?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I was here when you got here." So, but it's been at least a month, right, or somewhere around there. What have you been up to?
Yeah. Well, at the moment, I moved out. Finally, of my parents' flat. You know, it took long enough. Yes.
Yeah.
So I moved out, got my own place, and just been enjoying that ever since. And
walking around with no pants on, mostly no pants.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and it surprised me how many fucking DVDs I have. Like I had to buy like 10 trash bags just filled with DVDs, like to bring it out here. So
what?
I know, because this is stuff that I was like collecting since I was 14, 15 years old when DVDs like were coming into their prime.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh shit, all that space I'm wasting. And I'm even more annoyed because like now that I've got Netflix, I just don't see the point in having these DVDs anymore.
Yep, I got the exact same thing. I was at least lucky in that when I was younger, Like when I was a teenager in the 90s, it was kind of like the Wild West beginning of file sharing, and I was poor and didn't like to buy things. So I shall we say, have less than legitimate copies of movies. But the thing is that I finally got to a point where I realized, well, yeah, you can like a movie, and you could burn it to CD, and you can keep it around for a long time. But I just found myself going, eh. And then as soon as Netflix streaming became a thing, of course, Netflix streaming kind of sucks these days, Nick. It's, as far as like, it's good for TV shows, but for movies, I really can't wait for HBO Go to go a la carte, because when I had an access to HBO Go for a few months there, I found that they had a much better movie selection because they're HBO, because they've been getting like bigger movies for a longer period of time. But, you know, when I go to Netflix and I go, hey, what's new movies? It's like, if you want to watch Pawn Stars, right, Netflix has got you goddamn covered. But if you want to see, like, I mean, you know, any of the Phase 2 Marvel movies, I don't know. I'm going to go to Netflix right now and see how many of the Phase 2 Marvel movies are on there. I mean, I'm sure that Guardians of Winter Soldier aren't there. Iron Man 3, maybe, is unavailable. Nope, that's not there. How about Thor?
It's just Phase 1, I think. Yeah, I was having a look through. Yeah, I mean, like I think it's good for TV shows. Like I was watching Marco Polo, and you know, Breaking Bad, of course, is Netflix's proudest achievement of having. But no, nothing really. I mean, like there's some really good documentaries, but the one film I really wanted to see that you guys have on Netflix in America that we don't have here is Snowpiercer. I had to watch that online illegally, and I was just so annoyed how you guys can have it, but we can't.
Oh yeah, I guess because the rights, there's a whole different selection for you over there than there is over here with us.
Yeah, but that's a good movie though. Anyone listening to this, you have to go and watch Snowpiercer.
It's pretty goddamn good. It gets a little silly from time to time, but I appreciate just how I appreciate any movie these days that's just got a creative concept, right? That isn't just kind of just a slight rehashing of some shit that I've seen 100 times before. And that's what I liked about Snowpiercer. So it was definitely felt very unique. And it
kind of reminded me of Metro in a weird way. Didn't you get that?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, I liked it. It was interesting. I don't know if I'd ever watch it again, but I thought it was interesting. But actually, you know what, Nick? That's a great segue, because one of the things that I was interested in getting your take on before we move on to the news this week, because news is a little bit, but is, did you see we had a catastrophic, world-ending, oh my God, it's the end of civilization as we know it announcement last week that there's going to be a new Ghostbusters movie, and it's all chicks. Ah! Did you see this?
You know, I think I saw it like a little bit on Yahoo News. It's going to be like with female comedians, but the thing is, I don't know that many female comedians. So, like, what's the deal with that?
Well, let's see. It's okay. So the director. Okay. Now, part of you guys have to remember. I mean, Nick, you probably see more movies on average than I do, because I spend a lot more time just straight up playing video games. But. So there was, okay, so you remember, like, for years there was that sequel talk, right, where they were like, oh, we've got everybody but Bill Murray, he won't come back, and Ramis is down, and blah, 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 blah. And Dan Aykroyd was a big fan of doing a Ghostbusters 3, essentially, right, for a long period of time.
Well, it's because he's not doing anything else at the moment, so
right.
I totally buy that.
Right. So then that kind of got scrapped. I mean, I think after Harold Ramis passed away, I think it was last year, right?
Didn't Harold Ramis and Bill Murray really hate each other? Wasn't that one of the reasons that they didn't want to do another Ghostbusters together?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. But apparently, they've got this new kind of things put together. Instead of doing a sequel, they've got this guy, Paul Feig, that did Bad Teacher, Bridesmaids, The Heat, Knocked Up as this actor. Okay, as a director, let's see, Unaccompanied Minors, Bridesmaids, The Heat, and a few other things. And then an all-lady cast of Ghostbusters with Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy, who I haven't really seen that many Melissa McCarthy movies. I know some people like her, some people hate her. And then let's see, who are the other two folks here that I don't really? Leslie Jones and Kate McKinnon. I'm not really super familiar with either one of them. But, oh my God, you would think that they were that the part of the advertising for this movie, that they were going to go over to everybody's house with the Men in Black mind eraser and delete original Ghostbusters from your brain. And you were only ever going to be remembering that there was this like lady casted Ghostbusters thing. I was thinking about it. There's so much outrage and stuff. And I was thinking, like, this is one of those things where when Alien Isolation came up, where I just found myself looking at how upset people were and going like, dude, haven't the things that you loved as a kid already been ruined enough that you're not surprised by it anymore? I mean, we live in an era where Star Wars, one of the defining things from my childhood, right, has gotten to a point where, like, the prequels, I mean, some people, Jason likes the prequels. I don't hate them as much as everybody else, but I don't like them as much as the original franchise. And that's way bigger than Ghostbusters. I mean, for fuck's sake, Ghostbusters 2 is an all right movie, but, you know.
Hey, I like Ghostbusters, okay, 2. I mean, I watched them both at the same time, and I thought they were both great. It's not as original as the first one, but it was still fun.
I mean, no, it's fine. I don't think it's as good as the first one, but it's fine. I mean, I think it's a definite step down. It's just kind of a rehash with some different stuff added in, and I don't have any serious problem with that. I'll still go back and watch from time to time. But when I'm in the mood to watch Ghostbusters, I just pop in the original Ghostbusters and watch Ghostbusters, because nobody's getting rid of Ghostbusters. And I guess that's why a lot of times this outrage on the internet about like, you're raping my childhood. And it's like, are they really? Because Ghostbusters is still a thing. And there hasn't been a Ghostbusters movie in a long time. So if you really have a problem with the Lady Ghostbusters, just don't watch it. Pretend it's not a thing. I mean, I don't know.
It's a reboot, though. It's not a sequel.
Yeah.
Apparently they're starting everything over again.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I have been feeling let down since Star Wars prequels and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, good one. Yeah, that's another good one.
Yeah. Actually, I remember I took my little brother to the cinema, and he was a huge Indiana Jones fan. Like, he was wearing the leather jacket and the hat, and we watched the entire movie. Like, he'd been waiting all week to see it, and then as the film finished, I turned over to him and said, like, did you like it? And he was like, I guess I did. It's like, really? Did you like the part with the alien? No, that was kind of stupid. It's like, really? What about the fridge bit? No, that was really stupid too. It's just so he was like in shock. So he was in denial, and then the more he thought about it, the more he hated it, and now he just dismisses it. So he doesn't even recognize it as a sequel. He thinks like the crappy TV show. Do you remember, like
the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles? I've never seen it. I know a lot of people like it, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, he considers that more as part of the canon than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could. It's funny, the reaction that you're saying that he had. It's like that was the same reaction that I think that I had when I saw The Phantom Menace. Is I wanted to like it so bad that I didn't actually like it, but I would sit there convincing myself that I liked it, like trying to logically make my no, you know, that one part, that lightsaber battle with Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, that was hot, man, and like, ooh, those special effects and blah blah blah. Meanwhile, the actual part of my brain that likes stuff was like, and I was like, no, but the lightsabers, and so. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the only thing, I guess I was talking with somebody about this last week, where I say that I was thinking back to the original Ghostbusters, right? And I was thinking back to the fact that if you think about the plot of original Ghostbusters, there's, outside of just the romance subplot between Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver, there's not much about the Ghostbusters that is like a dude thing, right? Like, it's not like they're all big lady killer, suave, like, you know, Don Juan guys, right? And there's not.
No, they're all nerds. That's the thing. And even Bill Murray is a geek.
Yeah. So I look at it, I just go, like, if you had taken in that movie out, well, I mean, there's a few little sub things, right? Like the you know, Janine and Annie Potts and Harold Ramis's kind of. If you call that a romantic subplot, I mean, she just comes on to him, right? But there's plenty of people in that movie that you could have switched their genders or their races or who they were, and it probably wouldn't have made all that much of a difference, right? If if Ray's character had just been a lady instead of a guy, and you had chosen not to write some kind of weird romantic subplot, that probably would have been the exact same movie as before. I mean,
but the casting saved that film. I mean, like what you're saying is that it wasn't exactly a very strong script, but they had the wonderful actors.
I think it's an incredibly strong script. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but what I'm saying is that like there's a lot of people who are upset about the fact that it's specifically for ladies, and what I was thinking was, for whatever this means, right? That the fact that all 4 of the Ghostbusters were guys, like no real serious parts of the plot outside of the romance angle really depended on them being guys, right? They could have been whoever. It didn't matter that they were guys because the humor is so broad that, Dr. Venkman's an asshole. He's not like specifically, or I don't know. That's the way that I see it, at least. So I'm sorry, I cut you off there. But
no, I see what you mean there. Yeah, I know. I don't know. Maybe I'm sexist, but I just don't picture ladies going out chasing ghosts as much as guys do. And that's a really good point, actually. I never thought about it that way.
The only thing I guess I'm worried about is that it's going to turn into that there's going to be a lot of joking at the expense of the gender stuff, right? Like, I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to say here is that the original plot of the Ghostbusters focused on 4 people busting ghosts, right? And if the plot of this new movie is about 4 people busting ghosts, I don't really see that serious of a problem with it, but it seems like it'd be really easy to wander off into a bunch of jokes that were specifically kind of lady jokes. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm going to watch it because it's a freaking Ghostbusters movie. But like I said before, it could be a great reboot. It could be the worst movie I've ever seen in my entire life, and it could be anywhere in the middle of those. And regardless of what that outcome is, I could still go watch Ghostbusters, Nick. I can watch Ghostbusters every goddamn day, and it's still one of my favorite movies of all time.
Well, I will watch Ghostbusters instead of watching the reboot Ghostbusters. I actually don't see a reason for them to make another one. It's kind of like that story about them making another Bill and Ted movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, Bill and Ted was a snapshot of the 90s. It wouldn't translate into today. I've seen no reason why that movie should be made today. It's like making another Wayne's World. Like, yeah. It's just stuck in its time.
I've heard some talk that they want to make another Bill and Ted movie, but have the specific plot of the movie be that the future that they predicted in the Bill and Ted movies didn't ever come to pass, and now Bill and Ted are both like kind of broken men because they saved the world, they had this excellent adventure and a bogus journey, and then the future that they were working towards never actually happened, and so now they're all just kind of dejected, and it's a darker story about them kind of coming back to terms with hopefulness of the future. I'd watch that movie, but yeah, I agree with you that Bill and Ted, I mean, there's a lot of shit like that though, right? V for Vendetta was a story in the comics that was specifically critique of Margaret Thatcher's administration, and then they made it into just a weird kind of anarchist thing. And I mean, like, Watchmen was a story, again, another Alan Moore story, right? But Watchmen was a story that was very much rooted in kind of 80s Red Scare, Russia, that kind of, the whole Cold War, right?
But I felt that Cold War stuff was the backdrop. That was not what the comics were focusing on. It was just on the development of the idea of the superhero. Well, and that's what appeals to people.
Not to go, I ranted about. Well, I don't know if I ever ranted on the show about Watchmen, but part of the problem that I had with the Watchmen movie was that Watchmen, in addition to being kind of set in that time period, was kind of a critique on what would it be, like the Silver Age of comics, right? And kind of, it was one of the first of those comics, at least that I know of, that did the whole like, well, what happens to a real person when they go out and be a superhero? Like, what kind of emotional and mental scars does that leave on a human being when they put on tights and go punch people? And I thought that it was a much more complex story. And the movie got some of that across, but the way that they changed the ending of the movie really bugged me. It bugs me to this day.
Why? I don't understand it. Actually, I prefer the ending, because in the ending of the comic books, it's spoilers. Aliens attacking.
Well, it's a fake alien. Is that they've made a gigantic fake alien, and transported it to New York City, and that when it hits, it sends out the psychic shockwave that kills everybody there. And so people think that the world is being invaded from an extra-dimensional alien force, and that's what unites humanity at the very end. And I think that works really well. I think the idea that Dr. Manhattan is the giant evil that is uniting the world is weird, because in the course of the comics, it's established that Dr. Manhattan is a United States military asset. So if suddenly a United States military asset starts nuking cities all over the world, even if the United States says, whoa, that guy went totally crazy rogue and we don't know what he's doing, you still got to imagine that a hostile foreign nation would be like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the big nuclear man you guys have. He just happened to go crazy and start taking out all of our most giant assets. Yeah, we believe you. No, that's cool. Plus...
Yeah, not necessarily, because a lot of the cities that America had, like New York and Washington, were taken out by Dr. Manhattan. So it's better to side up with the world's greatest superpower than to go against them and take on Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think that for me, a lot of it was that Watchmen the book, that ending was so, that the ending in Watchmen the comic was really more of what you would see in a comic book, right? Is that was like a trope of, well, originally those were supposed to be DC Universe superheroes, but that was kind of a trope of that universe, is extra-dimensional alien coming in from another reality. It fit more to me with the story of your Caped Crusadings and the way that the comics were evolving in and of themselves than that. Plus, I mean, I don't know. I only saw the Watchmen once a while back, but did they have a scene where they were walking around in New York where everybody was dead? Because in the comic they did have that, and I thought that was really affecting, because like there was stuff with the newspaper salesman and stuff where you saw that guy dead, and there was like landmarks that you saw that were blown up, and there were things, the psychologist and his wife. There were casualties of this event that were built into that story that the movie probably just didn't have time to even introduce.
No, it didn't have time for. Like, I watched the movie recently. All they did was just stand at the crater where the bomb kind of went off, and they spoke a little bit, and then they went off to Ozymandias.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't care for it.
I understand why they kind of used it, because the Soviet Union's been absolutely terrified. In fact, the whole world is terrified of Dr. Manhattan, especially the fact that he's working for the Americans. So having him as the villain, in a sense, makes perfect sense to me, more than just having a squid alien pop out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I read the comic a long time before the movie came out, and I really like Watchmen was.
I read the book just before the movie came out because everyone was talking about it so much, and I was like, okay. And I don't read comics that much,
so when I was here's my little. I like this little fact. So back when I was 18, 19, somewhere around there, I worked for Dell here in Austin, and I worked in technical support. The guy that sat across the cubicle from me was this guy you may or may not know. His name is Chris Robertson, and he's a comic writer. You know, there's a show that's coming on, I believe it's a CW, called iZombie, that's based on a comic that he wrote. And he used to go to the comic book store all the time, and he used to let me read his comics. Dude was totally into comics. I'm glad he's got this job. I haven't talked to him in 10, 15 years, but for my birthday, like it was for my 19th or 20th birthday, I think, something like that, he gave me the Watchmen, and I read it, and I was just like, it was an eye-opening experience to me, because I when I was younger, I used to read comics, but I'd read them. I would follow artists, not writers, and I could never figure out why one comic that I was reading, like I'd be reading like Wildcats, right? And Wildcats would get really good for like 3 issues, and then it would go back to being kind of mediocre again. I just go, wait, why was it so good? And it never occurred to me to look at who wrote it instead of the person drawing it. But that's what got me into it. So I'm probably not a good judge of that, because I'm such a purist for just stick to what the comic said. You got a comic, it says a thing, just make that movie. I think everything should be fine. But well, let's see. We are running a little bit long here, but before we jump into the news, Nick, do you have any games that you would like to talk about? Anything you've been playing recently that you think the people of Rage Select need to know about?
No. I played all the games that came out during the fall period. I think I got everything I wanted for Christmas, which I'm quite happy with. So, Metro, Shadow of Mordor, Alien Isolation, The Last of Us. I can't state how amazing that game is, but you and I did that review ages ago.
Yeah.
GTA 5. Actually, one of the things I just appreciate in that game is that there are more songs on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very lame, but I can't tell you how excited I was when I was going over to my favorite radio station and I played more Chiba on it. So I was like,
yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Man, I've got such an issue with Morchiba.
Wait, what? What's wrong with Morchiba?
Well, let's see. Okay, I used to listen to them more. I mean, like, I love their first two albums, especially their second album. But I know that. So in their, what was it? The not Big Calm. Was it the Antidote where they got? Daisy Marty from this band called Noonday Underground that I also liked when I was. This is back in the mid 2000s or something. So okay, I listened to Who Can You Trust and Big Calm. Those were like my two big solid. Big Calm used to be like the album that I went to sleep to every night because it was such a mellow, easygoing album. Right. So then the Antidote comes out, and this Noonday Underground is like a kind of a not very well known act, but I really liked them. They had this lady Daisy Marty was their lead singer, and that was awesome. And so then she was the guest. She basically came on as the vocalist on the Antidote. And I really liked that album. And then one day I was just like tooling around on the internet, and I realized that it was like 6 to 8 months after that album came out, she filed a lawsuit against the other two guys in Morchiba for like harassing her and trying to intimidate her and do sex stuff or something like that. I don't have the specifics of this, but I know there was some kind of lawsuit that she brought against the other two, the brothers, Paul and Ross Godfrey, in the band about some heinous shit that they acted really shitty towards her. They treated her really shitty when she was working with them. And she was basically kind of suing them for, I think, a piece of the royalty off of that album or something. I don't know. But that was a long time ago, so I don't know. I don't even know if I know the end of that particular story.
Don't tell me. I really like Morchiba. I mean, like, there's that. There's Jeepers Creepers, which is a movie I used to love. Actually, like the first one, the second one. But then I found out that the director was a pedophile, and that just, like, I can't watch that movie again. Because of, knowing that information. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Nick, I'm pretty sure that if you rewind the tape to where we're talking about that, I was like, oh, man, I got some problems with Morchiba now. I learned some shit. You're like, oh, yeah? What was it? And then I told you. But apparently, I haven't listened to them in years. In fact, actually, you bringing that up means that I'm probably going to go over and Spotify them and listen to the last, because they've had, 1, 2, 3 albums since The Antidote. And it looks like Sky Edwards came back as their lead singer.
I only listened to the first 2 albums, so I know what you mean.
Hey, you know what? The Antidote, I think, is a really good album. And if you can find Noonday Underground, I think they're a really good band as well. I mean, that was a long time ago I was listening to them, so I'm just talking about memory here. But, yeah, I don't know. Those first 2 albums, at least, I can vouch. Those are good. Okay, well, any other games that you've...
No. Okay. I was looking forward to... fucking Witcher 3, and then they pushed that back again.
Yep.
So there's nothing coming out like at this point in time.
Let's see. I think the next big one, we had Deadlight came out. Deadlight? Yeah, Deadlight came out this week, right?
Yeah.
And the Grim Fandango remake. If you never played Grim Fandango, Nick, you might consider that. It's $20 American on the PlayStation Network. If you got a PS4, you can get it. That's just it's not a huge redo, but it's just an up-res of the original Grim Fandango, which is a fantastic game. I think the next things, okay, let's see. The next big things are Evolve on February 10th. But if you're interested in Resident Evil, the first episode of Resident Evil Revelations 2 is out February 17th.
Well, what about the HD remastered? That
Resident
already
Evil?
came out, didn't it?
Yeah, it already came out. Yep, we did a video for it on the site.
I was pleased to see that they got rid of all the crappy acting, the voiceovers, and the the filmed cinematics with that dog's puppet head at the beginning of the game.
We were playing it, and I pointed this out while we were playing it. But so we were playing. Grant and I were playing. He was playing as Jill, and there's that part where she almost gets smashed, right? And was it Barry? I guess pulls her out. And what does he say? He says in the original, he says, you were almost a Jill sandwich. Like, really stupid, cheesy line, right? But in the remake, they rewrote it to try to make it less cheesy, but it doesn't make any sense anymore. He's like, you were almost flattened to the point where you could fit in a sandwich. And it's like, that's just as bad, but it's like, so if you're going to stick with a shitty sandwich Jill inside of 2 pieces of bread joke, just make the original Jill sandwich joke. But just like, I want to see them redo all the lines from the original Resident Evil the exact way that they were written, but have somebody just acting the shit out of them. Like they're super dramatic. Like
you need someone like with the presence of Morgan Freeman trying to deliver those lines.
You're almost a Jill sandwich. Yeah, something like that.
There's no bit that you can actually write your way around. Like the moment where what's the guy with the beard called? Hank? Is that it?
I thought it was Barry.
Barry, yeah, Barry. When he's looking at that pool of blood. And he's like, blood looks like Chris's blood, or something like that. It's like, go, I'm going to be examining this puddle of blood and find some clues. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how can you examine a puddle of blood?
Shh, Nick.
They still had to write that in because that was in the original game.
Yeah.
And he's like poking his fingers at it, which is not a thing any cop would do in real life.
Well, let's be honest. The stars are not actual cops. They're more of a crazy vigilante group. I think the only thing in February that's of note is that if February 20th, the Order comes out. Order 1886 comes out. So,
I don't know. Were you looking forward to that game?
I am. I mean, I've watched a bunch of trailers for it, and it seems like it could go either way. I mean, the studio that's making it, they're okay, but it looks like they're putting a lot of time and effort into that game, and there's been I've seen a lot of cinematics, I've seen some gameplay. I think I'd like to see some more gameplay before I say for sure, but I think it's got an interesting concept and it looks fantastic. I mean, the just the graphics on it are great, but I mean, you look at Ready at Dawn, and they made God of War Origins Collection, God of War Ghost of Sparta, and I think the port of Okami to the Wii or something like that. Like, they're not will be, I think, their first original game. No. Okay, so they made God of War Ghost of Sparta, which was a PSP game, and then the God of War Origins Collection, which was, I think, Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta on the PlayStation 3, but I don't know. I mean, you could point at some point. You could say, "Hey, these guys haven't made a game before. This is probably going to suck." On the other hand, I keep pointing to Rocksteady and the fact that before Arkham Asylum, they had some stinkers. They had some pretty crappy games. So, but anyway, okay. So we got that, and I think at this point, let's jump into the news. We have precious little of it, but we've prattled on for quite a while. So. Let's whip through this. The first up is kind of a little bit of an insider baseball thing, and Nick, I don't think this is going to really mean all that much to you, but my go-to website for video game news that's not on rageselect.com, www.rageselect.com. I'm saying this like they're not on the website right now, but yeah, is Joystiq, and Joystiq is shutting down as of this week. Yeah, they're closing up shop. And it sucks because Joystiq was one of the last. I mean, I don't know. There's probably more out there that I just don't know about. But for me, I've stopped reading websites like Destructoid and Kotaku that kind of put a spin on everything. I mean, not necessarily that I don't believe that you should have any kind of editorial control over the stuff that you're posting. It's just I prefer to get like a Reuters feed, right? Like an AP news feed of video game news. Just short blurbs that tell you what's going on with pertinent quotes and pertinent facts without a lot of, waxing philosophical. And
it's not written like an essay, basically.
Yeah, I mean, two or three paragraphs, just the facts, ma'am, and that's about it. And Joystiq was one of the sites that I really liked that did that. It seems like I try to think through all the biggest gaming websites out there that do general games, and I know people who work for Kotaku, and I'm sorry, but Kotaku just irritates the shit out of me, man. Like, they're such the BuzzFeed of video game websites, and Polygon, I like the layout of their site better, but don't know. Do you have like a go-to video game website that you go to, Nick? Video game news website?
No. I actually just go on YouTube and see if I can find like specific channels that I particularly like. One of them, of course, is rageselect.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's at www.rageselect.com.
That's right. Yes. But like, why? Do you have any idea as to why Joystiq maybe shutting down?
No, I haven't really jumped into it. I mean, it sounds like. Let's see. I've got another news story I'm pulling up here. Let's see. It looks like Joystiq is owned by AOL, and according to sources, this is part of an AOL house cleaning of underperforming content properties that's supposed to be taking place over the course of the next couple of weeks. So
that's a bit fucking rich of AOL to say, because aren't they all underperforming?
Well,
I didn't even know AOL was still around until you just said that.
Well, yeah, I mean they own a bunch of stuff, right? So they're going to be owner of websites. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess. I mean, are we coming to a point where if you're not writing like clickbait articles in gaming news, then you just don't get enough traffic to be able to hire people? I mean, I know that's a shitty situation. I mean, I'm so, hey, news, Rage Select news folks, news writers, I am very sorry because we don't really make enough here to pay y'all, but like, I just have to wonder, like, what this means, because if it means that the only way that you're ever going to be able to get news is going to be through, websites like I'm at the front page of Kotaku right now, right? Okay? I'm at the front page. I'm just Kotaku.com. That's all I am, Nick, all right? Let me read you down the list of what I see at Kotaku.com. First story, whatever. Get 64% off the Turtle Beach Call of Duty gaming headset. Next story, everything you know about nacho cheese is wrong. Third story, football, the Kotaku review. Okay. And then you've got worth reading, Dragon Age Heartbreak, The Death of Madden, and more. The next thing is 20 weird, insane, and extremely disturbing Barbie dolls. After that is what I can only assume is a promoted advertisement. Looks exactly like a news story. Dollar Shave Club delivers you a great shave for a few bucks a month. And then you've got, after that, Law & Order SVU is doing another rip from the headline episode that touches on video games. Like, how many of those stories that I just listed off to you are even fucking video game stories? Like, a bunch of them are just, Barbie dolls, you got Shave Club, you got Law & Order SVU, and then the only video game story here is football, and I don't even give two shits about that. I scroll down further, I've got 2014's best games on sale, which is essentially a glorified ad. Lupin the Third, a visual comparison. I mean, like, I understand that people are interested in it, like, people want a one-stop shopping website for a bunch of different things, but fuck, man, like, IGN does the same thing. I just want a website that's just going to be like, all right, this was released, this thing happened, and I looked him up just to check, and it looks like on Alexa, the internet ranking, that Joystiq in global ranking, this is from 1 being the most popular down to zillions, right, is 2,965 95th most popular website on the entire internet, right? This is the entire internet at large, at least I think, according to Alexa. For comparison's sake, Rage Select is 529,872nd on the internet, right? Globally. So Joystiq was
Rage Selected on it.
Oh yeah, well they chart all websites. They don't give you the specific data for it, but they chart every website on there. So like, when it comes to ranking on the internet, Joystiq was roughly 527,000 ranks above us, and I guess I shouldn't be comparing us directly, but it seems shitty that they didn't seem like a website that they seem to do good work for me, and I guess that it just wasn't enough. So
could it be because they didn't bow under pressure? Because I know when I'm watching an IGN review, I can't help but sometimes feel that it is a little bit biased. like in favor towards the big market game that they're reviewing.
You could be honest, Nick, and say that they're just taking money to write good reviews. No, I see. The thing about Joystiq is that they have a much smaller staff, and they were more focused. They were more focused on news than they were on. Like, they did a few streaming things over the last couple months. They would do some streams, but they didn't do Let's Play videos. I don't know. I think, did they do a podcast? They might have done a podcast. Yeah, they did a podcast. But they were a smaller organization that was more about bare bones, and I think that's probably what what is going to end up killing them. Like, they did reviews, but they were written reviews, and that it just wasn't. It was a website that was trying to build based on a foundation of just like, here's the news, and
it's what appealed to me. I mean, like, I'll whip it out on my iPhone, and it'd be news on the go.
Yeah,
like, just read it very quickly, and you knew everything that you needed to know. Not the the opinion of the critic or whatever, just like the bare essentials of what was going on.
Yeah. So I don't know. I wish those guys all good luck. I mean, I know shit gets shut down all the time. We don't do this kind of like oh boo-hoo type of story every time a website or a video game company closes. But for this one, this is going to dramatically affect my life because I generally tend to parse all my news through Joystiq. So what are you going to do? Well, speaking of crappy things that I don't like, Nintendo, we mentioned this before, but Nintendo is rolling out the Creators Program to share its advertising revenue with YouTube content creators. Now, I don't know if you know this, Nick, but anytime you do a Let's Play video of a Nintendo property and they see it, they just immediately claim it and take any money that's coming from it. And you have...
Yeah, and stopping anyone from going against it, like claiming the whole copyright thing. Like when you're doing like a review of it, like they claim it instantly.
Well, I think it's more of a Let's Play thing. Reviews are generally speaking. I mean, there've been,
but they do the same thing there. They do the same thing there.
Do they?
Yeah. I was watching some Angry Joe videos, and he was complaining about that.
Okay. Well, Angry Joe, I mean, the other thing about Angry Joe is that his videos may be long enough to trigger more of that stuff. But anyway, Nintendo talked about this a while back, and apparently now they're rolling out this beta program where basically if you sign up with Nintendo and you register with them or whatever, they're nice enough to give you back like 60 to 70% of what you actually made on your content, which is just fucking balls stupid ass backwards, and god damn, fuck you, Nintendo. Like, I can understand when a developer, I have more respect for a developer that just says, fuck yourself, we're taking all the money, go to hell, right? Like, this is our game, we made it, you're using it, and we're just going to be dicks about it because right now we can, so fuck off. I have a bigger problem with the idea that Nintendo has this program out there that's basically like, oh, well, look how nice we are. We're going to give you back some of the money that you already made because look how nice we are. Fuck that. That's not nice. That's horseshit. If you want to be nice, you'd let all the free advertising that people like me and Rage Select, we'd let all those things that all Let's Players and people do to basically give you free advertising for your video games. And you would just leave it the fuck alone because you already make... I mean, well, I guess there was also another report this week that Nintendo's down this quarter due to a bunch of different things. But, there's a big part of me that's just like... Every time I feel the need, Nick, to just swear Nintendo off on their entirety, and then it'll be like, well, yeah, but we can't just completely ignore Smash Brothers, right? People want to see us play it, so...
Yeah. So you prefer dicks to pricks, is what you're telling me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so they're not doing a dick move, but they are doing a prick move, which is like, oh, we're not being complete dicks, but we're still giving you a reason to hate us.
It's more about like if you feel like you're entitled to just take the money of anybody that does anything that remotely touches your property, well then just be a man, Nintendo, and just take it already and be like, yeah, go fuck yourself, because then we all know where we stand and we know that if we make a Nintendo video, then blah 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 blah. Because oh my god, the last thing in the world that I want to have to do, Nick, is create some kind of fucked up content creator account individually with every company. Do you know how many goddamn video game companies there are out there, and if this becomes a thing that was widely adopted, like you're talking about every single AAA video game company. There's a ton of them. There's a shitload of them. I mean, you just go down the list of just straight up Ubisoft, EA, Activision, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, Sega, Square Enix. I mean, that's 8 right there, and that's just like the ones that I can think of, and then there's a shit ton of them after that. So if you have to go maintain some kind of weird relationship account that's totally your business to do, just so that you can get part of the money that you've made back, which incidentally, based on the hits that we make, is not very much. That's why I don't even care, right? Is like, who cares if a couple Nintendo videos get taken, we get our money elsewhere. But it's a shitty situation, and I wish that Nintendo could realize that, like, the people that are really into Nintendo stuff, that make Let's Plays and they love the system and the stuff that they have, they're fans, man. They're keeping your shit alive. And to feel like that you're losing money somehow because people, they're not going to buy our games because they're just going to go watch the videos on YouTube. That's the laziest excuse. That's like saying that people aren't going to go to the movies because Netflix exists. That's like when they said that people would stop going to the movies because VHS tapes existed. Every time a new technology starts to rise, this horse shit happens, and every time it has a slightly differing impact, but it's never as dire as those motherfuckers make it out to be. Or if it is as dire, it's because they fucking deserve it. Bleh.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. Like, bad marketing is still good marketing, right?
I guess. I don't know. Anyway,
well, I don't care anyway about Nintendo. I kind of gave up on them a long time ago. So, I mean, let them make a fucking good AAA title game that everyone wants to play, and then, I'll have a chat about them.
Yeah, Nintendo's in a weird spot. I mean, Nintendo's the only company. Nintendo's like the Apple of the video game world, and they're the only company that I know that you can that they can get away with essentially making a console that you really only want to play games that Nintendo makes on. Like, there are a few other ones out there, but you're really getting a Wii U, right, to play Nintendo games on.
Right. I think people are getting those consoles just to play Kingdom of Hearts. That's really about it. Like, it's very specific games, but
Kingdom Hearts isn't on Nintendo.
Isn't it not?
Nope. It's a PlayStation 2 title. It's on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox. The new one should be coming to like PS4, Xbox One.
Oh, sorry. I meant Super Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers, yeah. And hey, Smash Brothers is a really fun game. And you know what? Nintendo makes good games. I don't, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they don't make good games. The problem is that they just seem to not be willing to try crazy, whacked out. They seem trapped in very much a weird space, like a not very risk-taking, like the way their online service works is kind of atrocious, right? And the fact that the Wii U came out right before that console generation, that the PS3 and Xbox 360 were on their way out, right, for the PS4 and the Xbox One. I don't know. I've already gone a lot of this before, but
okay, fair dues. Okay, hold it.
No, you go though. People have heard.
I always felt like they were 2 titles away from shutting down. Like, that's why they keep doing all these sequels. It's just because they're terrified that they'll make a really, really bad game, and that's it for them.
No, Nintendo's got the funds. I've read stories about their war chest, about just the money that Nintendo has laying around. And they
but from the 90s and 80s, though.
But it's it's enough money for them to, like, run without making a profit for, like, a year or something like that. So... or 2 or something. It's a crazy amount of money that they have stockpiled to the point where they could just make bad moves for like a year or 2, and as long as they turned it all around at the very end and started making money again, they would not go out of business. But anyway, we've been way too far on this. We're going to move on. Next story basically is just a real quick little tidbit. So Ken Levine, creator of BioShock, who was left at Irrational after the big chop that we saw, was talking a little bit on Twitter about the new game that he's developing, and is very scant, but this is what we've got. The plot is sci-fi or sci-fi-ish, and the scope of the game will be, quotey fingers, large-ish. It's going to rely heavily on story and gameplay elements that can be repeated and recombined with one another in interesting ways. A design principle, this is from a Joystiq article, that Levine dubs, quotey fingers, narrative Legos. Which I think...
What? What's that supposed to mean?
I have no idea. It sounds like they might be okay. So if I had to take a wild guess, right, just like stab in the dark, what I'd say is that like you'll see games out there that have that do more with like dialogue. Like, you know how in Mass Effect it's a very directed dialogue experience, right? Like you've got 3 different options, and sometimes they'll change the plot of what you're talking about a little bit, but they're never like super crazy, right? They're never just, you can't, it's not like in the middle of a conversation you can't just say, well, fuck you, I'm not doing that, and then just turn around and leave the game, right? And go to get a vacation house somewhere.
No, you've
right?
only got like 4 different things to say, or perhaps the click button just in time, and you're curious what it does, and it turns out you're punching a news reporter in the face.
Right. But you can think of basically trying to take a structure of, like, we've seen a lot of evolution in the form of storytelling in a narrative, and then choice in a narrative with things like the Walking Dead game. I think that if you were to take that and try to take it one step further to basically starting to make the dialogue or story part of your game more of a sandbox where you can use, like, if you were to gamify communication with another character in the game to a point where it's like, think of it in terms of like, I mean, and I'm not saying that there won't be violence because I don't know, I'm just totally spitballing here, but think about instead of having a gun, think of the gun that you have as the conversation options that you have and the bullets that you have when they, quotey fingers, hit the other person as affecting them in specific ways. And so imagine when you're having a conversation with an NPC, if like you've got the equivalent of a vocal pistol or a shotgun or a machine gun, and they all have different ways. And if you're able to spend some time trying to dynamically make the NPCs able to react based on what is coming at them, you could get a game that was a little bit more dynamic when it came to, I don't know, I'm just talking out my ass here, but that's what it think of in my mind.
You got all of that from that description he gave out, because that sounded like a really vague description of a video game that could have been attributed to anything.
Well, I can kind of, I mean, like watching Levine stuff, I can kind of see, think of just the term narrative Legos, right? Think of basically having a conversation as one Lego, and then you having a bunch of other Legos that you can then build on top of that conversation, but that each one is going to change the way that conversation goes in a different way. So I'll believe it when I see it. Like, there's been so many games that have been bragging about that over the years, especially BioShock. And to be honest, I think BioShock has come the closest, even though they kind of copped out towards the end. Yeah.
But if he can deliver that, where I am totally in charge of my story and I can divert it to the path that I want it to go, then I will absolutely be getting that, because that's more of the thing I want from a game.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see the beginnings of things like The Last of Us, right, where you could see more of a slightly more sophisticated interaction path, and then if you take that and you say that our next step, like, think of the Walking Dead or Mass Effect dialogue as being like a corridor shooter, right? Like a really well done shooter, but it doesn't have that many twists and turns and paths. And now think of trying to expand that idea of the way that dialogue works into the equivalent of like a primitive sandbox game where you can kind of go anywhere and do anything. I don't know. I'm just thinking it from a gamification standpoint, but again, rambling. I'm sorry, folks. I'm a little sick today. All right, we're going to start whipping faster here. Star Citizen, the Chris Roberts space simulator, is up to 70 million, and by their estimates, it's expected to hit 100 million by the time that it's done with development. All I got to say is that this better be the fucking greatest game of all time for $100 million worth of funding.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Star Citizen, although I am fucking game itself. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit selfish when thinking that, but I want to see some fucking content. I mean, specifically, I want to see them traveling planet to planet like the way the No Man's Sky videos have done.
Yep, I agree. Well, they had a video that was like that a little while back where they showed multiplayer. They showed, I guess, like 4 people inside of a
they
ship,
do that really
walking
geeky,
around in the
like,
ship, going to like
pretending
different
to be a
turrets
SWAT
and doing
team,
different
kind of,
things in there.
Communication with each other. It's like Echo Team, go in there. I'm like, no way would a bunch of gamers talk to each other that way. They
that too.
Be calling each other names, pufters or whatever.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite is when they do that, as opposed to the way that normal things happen. All right, next up, Lego has added 2 more properties to the Lego franchises. Apparently, we are going to see Lego Marvel's Avengers and Lego Jurassic World. So I don't know if I really surprised in any way, shape, or form that they're Lego-fying yet more things, because they must be running out of shit to Lego by now, right? I mean,
yes. I mean, like,
everything's a Lego game.
I'm not. Yeah, like you said, I'm not entirely surprised, but yeah, they did tell Lego Harry Potter, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they had like 3 of those, I think.
Oh shit. Okay, I'm not surprised at anything that they do right now. So.
Yep. Next up, it's Lego Rage Select. Woo!
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I actually one of the fans actually found my address and sent me. I don't know if he wants his name read, so I'm going to keep it on the DL until I hear otherwise. But sent me a Lego AT-AT. It's Lego Star Wars AT-AT that I put together last night. Man, Legos they're crazy complicated now. Like,
did you see that video on YouTube of Lego Breaking Bad?
Yes, I did.
I would totally play that game. I mean it. Like, that game looks awesome.
Well, speaking of potentially awesome games, there was an announcement last week that Dragon's Dogma Online is going to be a thing. You probably never played Dragon's Dogma, did you, Nick?
No, what was that?
It was a Capcom game. It was a Capcom game, and what it was a very bizarre game. It kind of had combat that was a little similar to Dark Souls. Not all the way, but it was a third-person combat game in a medieval setting. But it did have this whole mechanic where there were giant bosses that you could grab onto and stab, like Shadow of the Colossus.
Wait, I think we did. I think I did. Didn't you tell us to review this one time in the old days?
I believe so.
Fuck this game, man! Like I remember I was trying to play the game and I kept being attacked by wolves like non-stop. Like the entire forest was just littered with nothing but wolves.
Oh, you know what? I think that we never actually beat it because I didn't beat it. But yes, that is the game. I remember, yes, you and I had numerous conversations about Dragon's Dogma. There was an expansion to it that came out. It was very obtuse, but they're making an MMO version or at least a 4-person thing. And so in the game you had AI controlled characters that you could take along with you called stands or pawns, yeah, that you could summon into your game that were other people's players. You could take them along with you on missions, and then you all would jump up on top of this guy and climb up and stab him and stuff like that. And I think it's a great idea for an online game, kind of Monster Hunter, but a little bit Monster Hunter meets Shadow of the Colossus, but a little bit more Dark Souls-y. I encourage everybody to check it out because it looks pretty cool. And I've heard a lot of interesting stuff about Dragon's Dogma, and I've never had a chance. I really would like to go back and get a better handle on that game because I kind of missed it. I would have
preferred like moments where I could just, stand around and enjoy the scenery if I wasn't being attacked all the time by, bandits and wolves.
Yeah.
Like that was because in Skyrim, there's so many moments where there's nothing going on, and that's what makes the game that much cooler. So, like, when there is something going on, it thrills you that much more.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, it seems like a good idea for an online game now. Whether that style of game still has a place in the world, I don't know. But I've heard. I had a friend who beat Dragon's Dogma, and he was telling me about what happens at the end of that game. Because apparently, when you beat the game, that it opens up like a whole other thing, and it was just crazy. And I was like, that sounds great. I don't really have like 25 hours to get to that part of the game, right? But anyway,
I love how you say you have a friend who's done it. So you've got one friend who's actually finished that game, and everyone else was just like, fuck it.
Well, yeah, most of my friends wouldn't play that game. That was, I think when we did the loading bar for that Jason just spent the entire time picking people up and throwing them off the side of a cliff because there was a button you could use to lift people up. So you just grab people and just throw them. All right. So quickly before we get done, we've got one more little grouping of things, and that is we've got what I like to call the part of the news, Nick, which is the HD remakes, right? Because that's all the rage now, and fucking hell, I am getting tired of it. So the first, or I would be getting tired of it, except the first thing that we've got here, I don't know if you're a big fan of this franchise, but on February 25th for the PC, the Homeworld Remastered collection is coming out.
Homeworld.
I'm
trying to remember what Homeworld was.
Homeworld was the RTS, but it was a space RTS. You had a giant mothership that was like vertical, like a big vertical machete blade, right? And you'd have like frigates that you could build out of it, and you had little fighters, and they all had these little jet streams on them, so you could tell where they were going. And it was beautiful at the time that it came out. But it was a space RTS. And what was interesting about it was that the effects of it was kind of what you might call an old school version of Your Choices Matter, because the thing is that when you went from like mission 1 to mission 2, any ships that you still had left alive at the end of mission 1 would come with you to mission 2, and then so on. So the thing is that if you had a particularly catastrophic defeat in one mission, you could just fuck yourself to the point where you need to go back to like mission 5 and do it over again better, because you were just not going to have the resources to be able to finish mission 8 because you hadn't built up the momentum that you needed to go forward. But for anybody who hasn't seen it, I highly recommend going out and looking. There's a trailer for Homeworld Remastered Collection, and it's Homeworld 1 and Homeworld 2 with the expansion, I believe. Is
this an old game?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like 90s old?
Yes. Let's see. Homeworld game. See when that came out.
Yeah, I think I remember there was a picture of it when PC games came in boxes, not like DVDs, but like actual like cardboard boxes, and the CD would be inside them.
Yep. No, this is coming out. Originally came out in 1999, September 28th of 1999. So basically, it's going to be $30. Well, it's $35 new, but it's on sale on Steam. Homeworld Remastered, Homeworld 2 Remastered. I think if you just go and look at the trailer for this, if you could just look at the screenshots. In fact, Nick, I would highly recommend that you go look at the screenshots of this while we're talking Homeworld Remastered on steampower.com, because they've done a hell of a job putting this thing together. And it's hard, but it's a really interesting game, because you're the last hope of this civilization. You got this one gigantic ship. You're jumping out, trying to kind of find a new world, and in the meantime, you're building these fleets of ships, and you've got frigates and destroyers and upgrades and different things, and it's just a really fun game. I never beat it because it was so goddamn hard, but it looks like it's going to be shaping up to be something absolutely fantastic.
Oh.
So,
okay.
As well, there's this just kind of came out of nowhere. In fact, we may have to play this today if we play it on Sunday streaming. Great. It just kind of depends on how much it costs. But Indigo Prophecy has also been HD remastered and put out.
Oh, are you kidding? I love that game. That's one of my favorite games ever.
Which I look at this and just go, okay. Like, it's starting to get a little bit. I mean, like, okay, yeah, definitely Indigo Prophecy. I played up until the point where the giant bugs started coming out, and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, the first mission of that game is really, 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 like, it's just a really kind of what the fuck moment. That first when you're in the diner and the cop comes walking in and stuff like that. But yeah, it's $10 on Steam. I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, this is all real well and good, right? I understand that you want to get these things out there, but fuck's sake, we need more new games. Please quit putting out the same games over and over again.
But they're releasing them now, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, come on, there's nothing coming out at the moment, so at least we can get the old games we liked, but, better graphics and all. I mean, like, I wouldn't mind having another crack at Indigo Prophecy. I've forgotten about that game. That I really enjoyed it when it came out. I mean, that was why I was wanting to play Beyond Two Souls and Heavy Rain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're very story-driven games. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's $10 on Steam. I'm sure that the system requirements can't be very high for it. I've just looked at the screenshots, and yeah, they've definitely done some work on it, but not anywhere near the sort of work where it would be like, no, you're going to need a big system to play it. All right, and then last but not least, let it never be said, of all the things in the world that I have to say about the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, let it never be said that they are not prolific, because Five Nights at Freddy's 3 has a teaser trailer. It's on Steam Greenlight. It's probably going to be coming out, I don't know, February or March or something, which means that that franchise is releasing games faster than any other franchise I've ever seen in the history of mankind.
I think that I'm a little bit late for this, because I swear to God, I only heard about Five Nights at Freddy's last week or 2 weeks ago, something like that. And are you saying there's 3 of them already?
No, I'm saying there's 2 already. They just announced the 3rd one. Is it the first one? So let me illustrate for you how fast these games came out. Five Nights at Freddy's came out on August 8th of last year, right? Five Nights at Freddy's 2 came out November 11th of last year.
Shit.
So like 2.5, 3 months between 1 and 2. And it's funny because I traditionally I've been on the show saying that I'm not super fond of I'm not super fond of Five Nights at Freddy's, but recently I actually went and I looked up a bunch of the lore for Five Nights at Freddy's, and here's the thing. I like the lore. I think the story is kind of interesting. I think the gameplay still is just garbage, because it's just switching between these cameras, wait for something to jump scare you. I mean, I know there's strategy there, right? There's kind of management strategy of having to make sure you're looking at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. But generally speaking, the gameplay for the game, it's kind of like the first Halo in the way that I like the story, but I just don't want to play the game at all. So,
yeah, well, I mean, you don't like jump scares.
Yeah, I'm not super big fan of those. Plus, it's just kind of, I mean, like, have you played that game, Nick? Have you played Five Nights at Freddy's?
No, I watched an honest trailers of it on Smosh, but it's not something I'd be interested in. Like, when it comes to horror films or games, in fact, I tend to like atmosphere. It needs to like suck me in and feeling all unnerved and everything. I mean, Slender does that quite well, I think, but just jump scares for the sake of jump scares, it doesn't affect me in any way. I just feel like, okay, I just kind of wasted my time.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It is what it is. I think that the guy that's created it, I think that he's done a lot of interesting things with very little and I can appreciate that. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has some stuff in it that I did never see, but for the most part, I'm just not interested. I'd be more interested in watching somebody play this than I am in actually playing it, because, I watched Markiplier play Five Nights at Freddy's 1 on like the most difficulty level, and it was like he's just cutting between these 3 cameras, just dup, dup, chick, chick, dup, dup, chick, and then turning the light on, turn the light off, camera, light on, light off, camera, light on, light off, camera, light on, light off, like as fast as he can. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's very fun. I mean, especially once the jump scare stuff wears off, right? Once you've been jump scared to the point where it's not really super scary anymore, like the rest of it is just cutting between a bunch of different cameras and hitting a bunch of buttons. On the other hand, like I said, I think the story is interesting. I'm interested to see where this part of the story goes. And it looks like this one might have more actual animation and, stuff going on in it. So I don't know. Be interested. We'll check it out on the website. Whatever. But with that, that's all the news we have. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to answer your questions. mail@rageselect.com is the email address. So stay tuned, and we will be back momentarily. All right, folks, and we are back. Nick, we're back, and it's time Oh my God, it's time. It's time for the questions. And
which is the best part of the show.
yeah, how
Am I
can you
right?
not like the question? I mean, Jeff and Nick are talking about Ghostbusters. Come on, get to the questions, you sons of bitches. Actually, during the break, I was looking up to make sure that I wasn't totally talking up my ass about that whole Morcheeba lawsuit thing, and I actually remembered it. So, but all right, let's get to the questions. If you would like to send your question in, mail@rageselect.com is the email address. That is mail@rageselect.com. My God, Nick, every single time I say this, last week somebody sent their question into the admin account. I will not read it. I will not read it if it's sent to the admin account, only to mail@rageselect.com.
Have you ever caved in under the pressure and read a question from the admin account?
Maybe, but only when there were very few questions. But this week, actually, we had quite a few. So I've actually got more than usual. We're just going to see how many I can get through this week. So our first one comes in from Russ, and Russ says, "Hey guys, was there ever a case of a game developer saying that they didn't like the way most people were playing their game, or said it wasn't in the original vision that they intended? I'm looking forward to Bloodborne, but it really bugged me. When Hidetaka Miyazaki came out and said that the way people hid behind their shields for the majority of Dark Souls combat wasn't what he wanted that game to be like, and would have liked to see players being more quick and tumbling fighters. Maybe it only bugged me because my build in Dark Souls was heavily reliant on shields, but a developer shouldn't get annoyed that people use a mechanic in-game more than they intended." And he says in parentheses, "unless it's game-breaking." Are there any other cases like that got to you? Hail the Dong Lord, Russ. And then...
Okay.
Say,
I'm
blah, blah, blah.
thinking
Yep.
maybe teabagging in Halo multiplayer. Do you think that could be it? They're probably intending people to shoot at each other, but the humiliation afterwards, definitely wasn't something that he predicted.
Well, it's funny because I think that it actually the first sentence of his question is: was there ever a case where game developers saying they didn't like the way most people are playing their game? What do you think about this? And I think that games are like I don't know. There's a fairly well held belief in literature and fiction, right? That this writer, even if they didn't intend for this to be like an allegory for blah, 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 even if they come out and said, no, that's not what it's about. It's just about dong wizards or something. I don't know. It's not supposed to be some kind of metaphor for blah, 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 that they'll be like, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter what they thought. I think that in a lot of cases when it comes to people taking the systems that game developers have created and then figuring out how to do their own things with them, I think that's a beautiful thing, right? Because it just goes to show how emergent gameplay in video games and how the interaction of the person playing the game is so much more than just, watching a movie, right? It's so much more interactive than that you can even get to a point where people are playing a thing completely in the wrong way, completely in a way that nobody ever thought of doing. And sometimes that can lead to stuff that's just awesome. So, I think that with the Dark Souls example, it's kind of stupid that, if he didn't want people using shields, they shouldn't have put that many shields in the game, right? They shouldn't have put shields in and the ability then to upgrade them to the point where you can really cancel out a lot of the hits that are coming in because people are going to do that. On the other hand...
I see what you mean. Like, it's about everyone's having their own unique interaction with the game that is different from what the artist entails, but like you say, it is about a gamer playing the game in their own unique way.
Yeah.
But I don't see why the gamer should be pissed off in the first place. Isn't that the beauty of it all?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching Deus Ex Human Revolution, and there was a level where just a gamer was trying something, and he succeeded in sneaking into the building that's the game that the company said they haven't even thought of doing it before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that. I think all that stuff is absolutely fantastic. And when you look at Bloodborne, right, from the same developer, Bloodborne, at least from what I've seen so far, doesn't even look like it has shields, right? So if he was like, well, I didn't mean for shields to be the primary thing, and then they ended up being a big thing, so I'm just taking them out. And you go, okay, that's cool. That's a good way to do it. I've still got Dark Souls. I can play it as much as I goddamn want to, which is quite a bit. But But yeah, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me when if a developer says, you're not playing it right, because honestly, Nick, I run a Let's Play channel. Everybody tells me I'm not playing it right. It's not just the developer. It's every single viewer of Rage Select. At some point or another, it's just been like, motherfucker. In fact, I've had people criticize me back when we were playing a lot of Dark Souls. I had people criticize me for using a shield and for using the lock-on button in Dark Souls, because at a certain point, people get to high enough level or skill level where they just don't do that. Everybody does parries all the time. I've never gotten into doing that. So as far as I'm concerned, you just play it the way you want to, man. That's no problem.
I think I remember like you and Jason were playing Red Dead Redemption, and there was supposed to be a level where you're supposed to kill someone. Instead, it was either you or Jason like tied that person up and then left them on some train tracks to be killed instead of just shooting that person outright.
Yep. That sounds like something that we might end up doing.
See, I mean, like, you could have just shot that person, but you found a more inventive way of killing them.
Yeah.
So I think that's...
Plus, I've talked to people before, like with Grand Theft Auto 3 and San Andreas and stuff like that. I've talked to people who've played those games who have never really played the campaigns all the way through. They're just like, yeah, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to blow shit up. I'm going to fucking be a crazy person, right? Or they'll play a little bit of it, but they won't finish it. I mean, honestly, you know, there's been some articles that I've read that said that when you talk about playing quotey fingers the game the way it was intended, the number of people who actually finish every game that they play all the way to the end is staggeringly low, in my opinion, because I gotta beat the game. Like I need to beat the game. But the idea, I mean, to me, I think you could make an argument saying that the idea of playing half a game and then putting it down because you get bored of it, to me, is playing the game the wrong way. But you know, it's just whatever floats your boat. Like the glorious thing about games is that they are so interactive that you can kind of do whatever you want to. So. All right, our next question comes in from JW, and he says, followers of the Dong, I was wondering which you prefer in video games, enemies leveling with your character or having enemies stay the same level as when you first encountered them. I prefer it when you're able to level your character and just wipe the floor with lower level enemies and be rewarded for your hard work at earning the levels instead of running into a common enemy who is just as powerful as you. As always, thanks for your hard work and rage on. Best regards, JW. I'm sure you've run into this before, Nick. What do you think?
I totally agree with him. I mean, what's the point of leveling up if the enemies level up with you? I mean, I'm talking about like low-level enemies. You know, I mean, I'm talking about like the boss at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's in fact when games do that level matching shit, it almost entirely turns me off of the game. In fact, I remember very specifically that Dead Island, the first Dead Island did that, so that no matter how high a level you got, the base level zombies were always like they were powerful enough to start attacking you. And it got me into this position where I was like, why would I even do any of the subquests in this game? Because the subquests are just going to make me more powerful. That is going to make the zombies more powerful. So why don't I just run all the way through the game and just mainline the main story? Because why would I want to get more powerful if everything else just stays the exact same level?
And yet you asked me why I didn't finish that game to review it.
Dead Island.
That was my main fucking gripe when I was reviewing that game. It's like, I really did not see a point in continuing.
Well, you weren't playing it right, Nick. Come on.
I was. Shit.
Yeah, but I've talked about this before, especially like in regards, a lot of times when I talk to people about Fallout 3, I say that like, I feel like the best way to reward a player for the hard work that they've put into the game is by letting them become more and more and more and more powerful. That if I've put 70 hours into Fallout 3 and I've leveled everything up and I'm crazy powerful, that should be reflected, because if it's just like, I play certain games certain ways for certain challenges, but there's some games where I just want to become a fucking super god. I want it to be a power fantasy. And some people would say that's not fun. I think that you can start out by having a game be very challenging, and as you work at it, have it get less and less challenging. And that could totally be fun too. It's just kind of different strokes. So, every game doesn't have to be the same. I think the best games out there are the ones that have a progression, right? Where as you get more powerful and you move forward in the world of the game, the enemies that you're facing start to get more powerful. So if you go backwards to the first area, you're just going to mop the floor with those guys, and they're going to be hardly able to touch you at all. But as you keep moving forward, they're going to keep ratcheting up the difficulty in a controlled way, so that the challenge, you still have a challenge if you're just playing through it, but you still have a sense of power. So like if you get an ability that's able to wipe out 5 guys, right, you start saying that instead of throwing 5 guys at you, they're throwing 20 guys at you now, and they're a little bit more difficult, so that you are able to still have fun with the challenge, but it's not like if you go backwards, you could still lord your work over the video game.
That was the appeal for Skyrim when it came to like the way I played it, because I remember the beginning of the game, I used to be terrified of trolls.
Mm-hmm.
Like little frost trolls. But then after a point, when I was killing so many dragons, I was actually actively looking for trolls, because I was very embarrassed with the way they killed me, and I wanted to make them pay later on in the game.
Yeah, that's it. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Our next question comes in from the mysterious hooded man. Woo! And he says, I guess he says, hey, Jeff and Nick. First time mailing you guys. Thank you so goddamn much for what you're doing, or for what you guys do. Been a biggest fan since loading bar days. And then you all have been a part of my day for the last 4 years, giving me the biggest laughs I've had in a while. Went through some seriously bad stuff in the last year, and thanks to you guys keeping up the content and the laughs, I managed to get through it. I just wanted to say how much that means. I'm sure a whole bunch of other fans. So I just wanted to let you know how grateful I am for what all you guys do, and just wanted to send you guys some love and support, and I'm working on getting into your Patreon so I can give back somehow. Great, thank you. Here's the question, and I picked this one specifically for you, Nick. So I'm a huge fan of Assassin's Creed, but the last few years have been a real letdown. Ever since AC Brotherhood, the franchise just seems to have declined story-wise, and I know you feel the same way, but I'm curious, what would you have done to maintain the interest and excitement that the previous games had before everything went stale? Is there anything you would have kept or kicked out? Do you really feel that the modern-day component is a waste of time? And he says, parentheses, I personally got into the story because of the modern-day element. Just would really love to hear how you feel about where the franchise is at this point and where it could be going. I personally would have loved it if maybe for one game they actually drifted away from the Abstergo story for a bit. For example, in the modern day, the assassins could be going back or going from one country to another, but get intercepted by pirates, Far Cry style, on the way, and spend the game in a situation of having to deal with a bunch of crazy people in the modern world. Anyway, thanks for everything you do, and let's see, everything you do, and skip the Mighty Dong outro, but wish you all the best and keep doing what you do, because you guys are amazing. Big fan for life, the mysterious hooded man.
I like that guy.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So what would you, let's see, well, here's the question, Nick, is what would you have done differently if you'd been handed the reins of Assassin's Creed after Brotherhood?
I would have had them implement a bad guy that you don't kill just outright at the beginning of the game, that you have him make like an appearance again and again just to infuriate the player, just so you like really, really want to kind of get him. Kind of like the way Vaz was in Far Cry 3 before he died abruptly. But just some better writing, I think. Just not just some random missions, but like missions that actually were leading to something.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I remember I was talking with my brother, who's, like, a huge Assassin's Creed fan, and when he said that they were going to be doing an Assassin's Creed during the French Revolution, I thought that was, like, a perfect setting. Because you could, like, murder, espionage, all this craziness going on towards building a new republic in France, throwing down the tyrannical regime of the monarchy. Like, there's so much you could do with it. In fact, I don't keep going on about it, but Assassin's Creed 3, having the main character play a Native American Indian, and he fights on the Patriot side, believing in the words of the Declaration of Independence, like all men are created equal, and then finding out that it doesn't apply to every single American. I thought that would have been that was going to be like a turning point in the game where he's not fighting British anymore, but he's fighting the very people that he's been siding with. Mm-hmm. But instead, they kind of just fizzled out and went nowhere with that.
Yeah, I think that there's, if I was going to take a stab at it, I'd probably go in two different directions, right? One is that I feel like the meta-narrative of Abstergo and what's his name? Adam Sandler, the main guy.
Adam Sandler? What?
He looked a lot like Adam Sandler in Assassin's Creed Revelations, but who's the guy? The your dude in the first Desmond, right? If you had a better idea, I think that having having a direct antagonist for Desmond, like outside of the Animus, is interesting. And you know what's I think really fascinating is they kind of had this idea in the multiplayer of like people going into these simulations and then fighting each other. I think it would have been much more interesting if you started to have like, oh my God, like this guy has hacked our system and now he's inside of your Animus simulation trying to kill you to keep you from figuring out what's going on here. But I think that I just feel like the writing that they got into, that it got very lazy, that every story was about, well, we got to go back into your memories and we got to find out where this precursor technology thing is buried or hidden or what happened to it, right?
Unity really pissed me off with that ending because basically everything you had done beyond that point, before that point, was a waste of time.
Yeah.
Did you finish Unity?
Yeah, I did. It's just, oh God, I disliked it so much that I can't even remember what exactly happened at the very end of it. But I think that they needed a better, and they needed more. Okay, so I think they needed more of a plot for outside of the Animus, more than just an excuse to go back into the Animus to do stuff. But I had been waiting since 2 for them to actually break Desmond out of the Animus and have him do more stuff. And I guess in 3 he had those little missions that he would go out and do, but there weren't that many of them. They weren't that interesting. And I think that inside of the Animus, I feel like they really struck gold when they hit Ezio, and that they didn't really understand that one of the reasons that Assassin's Creed 2 was so well liked was because Ezio was such a fun, dynamic protagonist. And I don't feel like Connor really was. Like, I always felt in 3 that the biggest problem with Connor was that he was gullible. Well, he kept getting his ass kicked intellectually by his dad, right? As he'd be like, well, no, I'm a good guy. And he'd be like, well, are you really? Look at these things. What about this? What about this? And it's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, he can't stick to his convictions. That was my problem with him, that if you're going to go around killing people, you better be damn sure for the reason why you're doing it.
Right. And then Black Flag was better. Black Flag was certainly better than 3, and I think it's because a lot of their protagonists. I mean, I had problems with what's his name? I can't remember any of the protagonists' name. And the protagonist in Black Flag, the problem that I had with him was that as it became more and more clear that he'd like left his wife and just went over to be a fucking pirate. Like at the beginning, it was like, oh, I'm doing this for my family. And then it was like, you're just getting drunk and blowing shit up. All right, listen, let's not paint this thing the wrong way. Then I ended up not liking him as much. And then, oh God, Jesus, Nick.
You can't even remember his fucking name, can you?
No. I'm trying to think now of the guy from Unity, Arno in Unity. God, he was so just who cares? Oh my, right. Well, it was just like, oh my God, it's a love triangle between him and this woman, and she's a Templar and he's an assassin, and what'll they do? And it's like, and the assassin council in that game, it was just like, you guys suck. And I don't know. I think that they may be sticking too much to the wrong things, right? Like in Assassin's Creed Unity, I tried playing the multiplayer. I thought it was so boring. Like I just didn't do anything for me, and all of the little pickup quests and stuff. I don't know. I thought Rogue was much more interesting because you had a character that was that you finally got to see the other side of the coin, right? Even as brief as it was. But yeah, I figure they need better writing. They need better writing for the historical stuff, and they need better writing for the modern day stuff. And they need to get back
and keep it simple. Like it's the storyline with the Sturgo is so fucking convoluted that actually I can't remember where I am at this point in Unity. What I remember the most was from the first Assassin's Creed to Brotherhood and Assassin's Creed 3. That's where they lost me.
Right. Well, plus, I mean, the thing is that correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't get as much into Assassin's Creed as some of my other friends. But it seems like they're hunting for the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. It's always the same. It's the apple or the, one of these. There's like, 2 or 3 of these artifacts, this precursor artifacts they keep going for over and over and over again. And it's just like, maybe we could have an Assassin's Creed game where your character has the apple, right? And that's part of your power. And so maybe it's like you're the son of a fisherman or something, right, in a small town, and then when your dad dies, you open up this box and like, oh my god, this golden apple is here, and you have to learn how to use all the powers of that, and maybe have a game that's less about doing the exact same assassin moves we've seen in 7 games now, and more about creating an organization with the apple, or changing the way that history goes, or blah, blah, blah. You know what I think would be a really cool thing, Nick? You know what I think would be an excellent idea for an Assassin's Creed game? Take a time period that we all know very well. Take an event in history. Take World War II, right? Start an Assassin's Creed game in, say, World War II, Germany or Britain or something like that, right? Somewhere that we know that people are fairly familiar with what events have happened in that war. And then make it clear from the onset that don't even fuck the Abstergo stuff. Just make it in the past. Like, take all that shit out and say that as we see the history at this particular point where our character comes into the story, the history that's happening is wrong. That it's not the right history, but that our character at a certain point in the first third of the game, like spend the first bit of the game showing that history is fucked up and wrong. It's not going the way it's supposed to be going. It's going the wrong direction. And then have our character come across one of these world-changing items like the apple and spend the rest of the game essentially reworking history to the way it's supposed to be from the way that it was. That would give you
like parallel dimensions, that kind of thing?
No.
Alternate reality?
I mean, like basically show a history where all the same players are there, right, in a world event, but they're all wrong. It's all out of place. And that maybe you could have, maybe the first time that you get the apple, right, and you see the world in a larger context, and say you're able to use the apple to look into the future whenever you want to. And you can see that when you project events forward from here into the future, that what you end up with is not the world that you and I are living in right now. So your whole job, like a Quantum Leap style, right, is to fix history using this incredibly powerful artifact to be the way that it is today. And that would give you a chance to do a bunch of alternate history stuff, to play some what ifs with some figures in history, to tell some really weird morality tales about maybe like you got to do this so that this happens. Like, it would be really interesting, and you've got all of the components are there to make a game like that. It's just that they're so set in their ways about you got to jump off a rooftop and stab this guy and jump into a hay bale, right? When you say you've got a series here that spans all of human history and has these like magic things that can do whatever in them. You've got secret societies and historical figures. Fucking use your imagination, Assassin's Creed, right? A love story between... It's Romeo and Juliet, for God's sake. That's what it is.
What about if they did something in the first civilization? You like it?
Sure.
Yeah, like because the French Revolution, we all know how it turned out,
right?
Whereas if you go to the first civilization, like everything's back to zero. We have no idea what happened that far back in the past, and that would be where the intrigue and mystery could come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Go to the future. Take it way in the future. You know, the futures they showed at the end of Assassin's Creed 3? Go to one of those. Set it in a future where that dumb hologram lady from the past has taken over everything, right? And like the world is now enslaved by these old progenitors, and they've come up with this future tech, and the world has been enslaved into this society, and you are now the seventh son of an assassin that has to go out and you're Nicolas Cage. No, you're who's in that Seventh Son movie? Jeff Bridges, I don't know, whatever. Forget that part. But like you're in the future, and now you've got to lead a new uprising. You've got to recreate the assassins. You come across a book from the past that's a holy tome from the assassins that shows you what they did and how they shaped the world. And so now suddenly you've got to break humanity out of the thrall that they built. There's so many stories that you could do, and yet they're just like, ooh, France, right? France. And you're just like, yeah, what about France? The revolution. Okay, what about the revolution? You're there. And it's like, well, that's not enough, man. The Marquis de Sade is there. That's not enough either. Like, you need a story and something that's not just one of the most basic bitch stories on the planet. I love that girl, but our families don't mix. Bop, 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 bop. Sorry, I had somebody who wrote an email one time. It was just like, hey, stop hating on Assassin's Creed Unity. And because it's really easy to hate on Assassin's Creed Unity, I really didn't enjoy very much of that game at all.
I think it's just the ending that infuriated me the most. Because, I mean, most of the time I was just like, meh. You know, I'm interested to see how it ends, but it didn't do very much for me.
Me neither. Anyway, let's move on so that I can't continue to bitch. This next one comes in from Drake, and Drake says, hey, Jeff and Nick, I recently finished Alien Isolation, which I thought was an amazing game that left me wanting more. My question to you is, what would you like to see in a sequel? Would it be too soon to try a more Aliens approach again? Maybe with some co-op? Or would you like to see more of the same but improved? Personally, I think if Creative Assembly did an Aliens game with the AI from Alien Isolation, it would be amazing. Thanks for reading my question, and may the great big black slimy dog monster from space erect from your chest in all its holy glory. Oh God, now they're chest brushers. Okay. All right, Drake. All right, so let's get away from the space erections here. Back to what would you like to see in a new Aliens game? What would you like to see happen post Alien Isolation?
The preview for Aliens Colonial Marines before they fucking lied to us. That's what I want.
Yeah, I think I liked parts of what they did with Alien Isolation, but I felt like, you remember before when I was talking about the progression of video game difficulty, I feel like Alien Isolation didn't do a very good job of their curve was too shallow of changing the gameplay as you continue to play the game. So to me, it ended up being very repetitive because you just kind of were doing the same thing over and over again in slightly different environments. I'd like to see an Aliens game. I think I've said this before, but I'd like to see an Alien game that's more like that's got a combat system to it, right? But like a very tight combat system, like an Arma meets Dark Souls kind of thing, where like you can kill an alien, you can totally kill that alien, but it's going to take a lot of work and it's going to be very difficult. And if you were to maybe put together a shooter where you could do like maybe like 2 to 3 person co-op, where you could just like get a couple of your friends in there, that could be really interesting if you could do that. Kind of like, I guess, Aliens Colonial Marines was supposed to had that co-op thing to it, but I'm looking for a game where it's, when you see the alien running at you, you're not just going and it goes and then it's dead, right? Where it takes a lot to kill one of these things, but it is possible.
Yeah, and the ammunition should be very scarce. And what maybe like you have to weld doors. You have like one corner of the ship that you barricaded, but you have to go out for like food and water.
Yeah, you know what? There's quite a few games out there that actually have that survival mechanism to them. Games like The Forest, and I mean Minecraft has the zombies that come out at night and that kind of thing. So that would be a really interesting take on it, now that you mention it, right? Is if you had it set on a space station, but you had kind of an open world, not open world, but like the station was open, but like every night you're going to try to barricade yourself against the aliens and survive the night, and maybe like night 1 there's only one alien, and then maybe night 2, and maybe make it a thing like in Shadow of Mordor, where like the aliens aren't necessarily in the first few nights trying to kill you, but if they get in and they grab your character, then you're essentially dead. You'll respawn with whoever you're playing with, but then as many characters as they're able to grab, on night 2, there's that many more aliens that have been, or like 2 nights later, there's that many more aliens that have been birthed, so that as time goes on, you're going to have to continue to get more barricaded and more, kind of maybe just fighting a losing battle for as long as you can. Like, I think that would be truer to the aliens experience. Like, what would be cool is if they had a prequel game that was set on the aliens world. Is it LV
426?
426? Right.
Yeah, that's it.
That was about the human colonists there. You know how they come in and they've got all this stuff all set up like barricades and stuff like that? If instead of doing that, if the game was all about basically trying to fight the aliens to a standstill, or trying to survive as long as possible. Like you said, like, all right, you've got 20 days until the Marines are coming. So your goal is to survive for 20 days. You get up to like maybe 6 to 8 people multiplayer and make the AI on the other side kind of balance to reflect that, and then just every day have to attend to things like hunger, so you can't just sit in a room forever, you'll starve to death. So you got to go out and forage for food and weapons and ammunition, and then every night have the alien attacks get stronger. That could be a really cool game. All right, I want to play that game. I want to play that game right now.
Yeah, me too.
Someday, Nick, somebody's going to hire me, and they're just going to have me sit in a room. They're going to come in. They're going to go, what should we make next? They're going to be like, well, I was thinking about a game where you do this. And they'll be like,
here's $1 million.
Millions of dollars. Yes. Ubisoft, you got to come to me. I will tell you how to fix the Assassin's Creed franchise. You know what the other thing I'm going to do with Assassin's Creed next time around, Nick? You're not going to synchronize any viewpoints. Because
thank God.
That's fucking busy work. I'm sorry. That's goddamn busy work is what that is. All right, so our next question comes in from our friend D Block Guard, who says, Dear Jeff and Nick, recently I introduced my brother to the Bluth family and the crazy characters of Arrested Development. At first, I was afraid that he wouldn't like one of my favorite shows. To my delight, he started to love the show. Now, whenever we meet, we would do Job's Chicken Dance. I was wondering what was the greatest introduction that you have experienced. Times that you have introduced other people to things that you love and times that others have introduced you to stuff that they love. Did they like it or did they not? Thanks, D Block Guard. Okay.
You go first.
Well, let's see. I know that it took me like a year and a half to get one of my groups of friends who they were really into Star Trek. They were really into Doctor Who. They really liked a bunch of stuff. But I couldn't get them to watch Farscape for the fucking life of me. And I finally made a deal with them where they were like, I tell you what, I'll watch Farscape if you watch Stargate Atlantis. And I was like, okay. And that turned out to be really great because Stargate Atlantis is a hell of a show, and I love it. And then I finally got them watching Farscape, and they absolutely loved that as well. So,
is it really that good? Because I was considering watching it.
Farscape?
Stargate.
Stargate?
Because Claudia Black is in Stargate, and she's meant to be in Farscape as well.
Okay, so the thing is that is what you're talking about is Stargate SG-1. There's like 3 or 4 different Stargate shows. Stargate Atlantis is a different show. It's a spin-off. I've never seen SG-1. I have seen Atlantis, and Atlantis, the premise of it is that they go through one of the Stargates to this city that is Atlantis, and it's like a, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I watched it all. It's like a strategically important place in the kind of nexus of the Stargates, and so they kind of get cut off from Earth, and they're trying to survive, and the only way they can survive is by going through the Stargates to other worlds and trying to poach supplies and stuff, and so they end up building a...
Atlantis happened at the same time as the final 3 seasons of SG-1.
Mm-hmm.
So what you should do is you watch an episode of SG-1, Atlantis, SG-1, Atlantis, because they keep referencing things that's happening in SG-1 at the same time with Atlantis.
Oh yeah, especially later on in Atlantis, when the crazy gray aliens show up, and I was just like, what the fuck? Because the bad guys in Atlantis are a whole different thing. They're a whole different group of bad guys from SG-1. But yeah, that was probably the most success that I've had. A friend of mine is really trying to get me. I watched the first season of the BBC Merlin show, and a friend of mine is really into that show and wants me to go back and watch all the rest of it. And I just haven't had a chance to carve out a time to do that. But generally speaking, I mean, the only thing is I'm pretty willing to throw down on just about anything. I've stopped in a lot of cases trying to get other people to watch shows unless they already show an interest, unless they're like, I really like Breaking Bad. Do you know anything that's really gritty? And I'm like, well, have you seen The Wire? And they're like, no. Like, oh, you should maybe try watching The Wire. Or like, oh, I've watched all of Star Trek. What other sci-fi should I watch? You go, well, have you watched Farscape? I'm like, no. Well, maybe try giving Farscape a shot. But I generally tend to find that if you try to get people interested in something and they're not ready for it, you just end up banging your head up against a brick wall. I remember advocating a lot for Doctor Who when it came back on, like before everybody got into it, when it was just the one season with Eccleston on it. And it took like a year or two for people to really start hooking into the new Doctor Who. And it was really dismaying to me because, that first season, then Tennant came on, and a lot of people came on to new Doctor Who, when Tennant was there, and they were like, oh, he's so dreamy. Oh, he's great. I love Doctor Who. And I'm like, it's not Doctor Who. He's not supposed to be fucking, okay, fine, whatever. Oh,
I don't know. I think my cousins introduced me to Schwarzenegger. Like, I watched Terminator 2, and I just thought, like, he was the coolest thing ever. And then they introduced me to Commando, which is now one of my favorite films of all time. I don't give a shit. Like, it's my Citizen Kane of 80s action movies. It's got everything I love about the 80s all in one movie.
Yeah.
So that, I try to get people into Stargate, but I think it's a very niche audience. Like, it's a very niche series. If you're just willing to suspend your disbelief about aliens making the pyramids, I think it's a really fun show.
I think it's a real shame that when you say Stargate to a lot of people, all they could think of is the movie, which I think the movie's kind of crap personally. I know a lot of people like it, but I watch it and just go, nah. But yeah, I think Stargate's actually a really good one. I don't know. I mean, I've turned people onto movies before. Last week, I showed a friend of mine. She came over to my house and hung out. We watched a bunch of horror movies. So I showed her Tucker and Dale versus Evil and The Babadook and a few things because she doesn't watch horror movies.
Wait. Did you like The Babadook?
I did like The Babadook.
Oh my god! I think I'm the only one who didn't. I was suckered into watching the movie because of all the universal acclaim it was getting. I just thought it was really lame. And I thought you, of all people, Jeff, would have recognized that the stock sound effect they used for the Babadook's roar is the same roaring sound effect from the dog in Resident Evil.
Yeah, no, I did, but I don't know. See, I think it was. I really enjoyed that movie because I thought that the main woman and the kid both acted their asses off. I mean, like I said, watching it again, it's funny because I watched it again, right? I'm like, you only see the damn thing like 3 times or 4 times in the entire movie. Like, it's not a monster movie, it's more of the... But for me, that works better because when you start throwing the monster out there all the time... Well, the thing I love most about the Babadook is the fact that you never actually see what the real thing looks like. You see the stupid oversized coat man with the knife fingers, right? But you don't actually ever see the big thing with the wings, right, that they show in the book at the end. And I liked it. I mean, I don't know. It's slow, and that's the thing that I say is that people who were telling me to watch it, nobody will tell you it's a real slow movie, so you got to be patient with it. But I thought that it earned and it takes a lot to really scare me, but I thought it was creepy, and I thought that it was effective for what it did. But I could totally see, Nick, there have been 100 times in my life where people have hyped the shit out of some movie to me, and then I've gone and watched it and been like, I might have liked this if you guys hadn't been telling me that it was the greatest movie of all time, right? But you did, and I got my hopes way higher than they should have been.
I'd be guilty of that as well. I was hyping the shit out of Snowpiercer when I watched it, because, like, to me, that was one of my favorite movies in a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And then having my sister, my girlfriend, watching it, they were like, "It's okay, it's fun." And I was like, "Are you serious? Like, can't you get how deep this film is on the intellectual level?" And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, maybe I thought it was way cooler than you all did.
Yeah. All right, our next question comes in from Justin. Justin says, "Hey Jeff and Nick, first of all, thank you guys so much for being around. I feel a little more fulfilled being able to enjoy my favorite playthroughs after a hard day. You will constantly have my Patreon support and whatever else you need for future endeavors." Hey, thanks, man. Second, with so many franchise and series being rebooted, which ones do you think just need to die? Not to say that they may be bad, but just that they need to be left alone. May the great dong ever be in your favor, Justin.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it is. Let's see.
Easy would be to say Fast and the Furious, but I'm guilty as to actually liking those movies, so yeah.
Well, I'm thinking games here personally, but let's see.
Oh, that's easy. Every Nintendo title. Fuck it, all of them. All of them need to fucking die. And they just need to create some original content.
Let's see. Hey, you know what? That's a perfectly valid answer, and I understand exactly where it's coming from. I would say, I think that, not necessarily dead forever, but there's plenty of franchises I think need to take some time off. And probably the top of that list for me is Resident Evil. They need to take a step back from that franchise and look at what they're doing. We were just talking about Assassin's Creed. I think that it would probably be in Ubisoft. I know they won't do it, but it would probably be in their best interest if they just backed the fuck off of Assassin's Creed a little bit. And because I think they're in a position where they could run that shit into the ground where just nobody cares anymore. I really enjoyed last year's Call of Duty. A lot of people would put Call of Duty on that list, but I really enjoyed last year's Call of Duty.
I'm in agreement with you. I thought that was the best Call of Duty since Modern Warfare.
Yep. I like Black Ops 2 quite a bit. I'm trying to think of anything. You could make a case for Final Fantasy, although the trailers that I've seen for the new Final Fantasy, I think those actually look pretty damn good, personally. Let's see here. Franchises where there's just too many of those games. I'd say like Skylanders, right? But I don't play Skylanders, so yeah. Let's just think for a second here. Games with a lot of sequels. What do we think? Games with a lot of sequels. I'll tell you what. I don't necessarily think that. That they should stop making games, but I feel like Telltale is starting to make the same. That using a very similar formula for every game that they're putting out they're basically using the Walking Dead format. They did it last year with The Wolf Among Us. They're doing Game of Thrones right now. They had season 2 of The Walking Dead. That one probably needs to take a little bit of a break.
I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is that I was playing Walking Dead season 2, and there's a bit in the game where you have to make a choice as to whether you rob this guy or whether you let him go. And I played the game again and went up to that point, and I did the opposite of what I did the first time around. The outcome is still the fucking same. I want my choices to actually mean something.
Yep. No, we said that. When I got done playing Walking Dead for the first time, I played it, I waited until it was all out, played the whole thing, went through to the end. Then I went online and started looking at facts and was like, well, what would have happened if I had done the other thing? And it goes, oh, nothing. Okay. So that's and I think that's a great thing about The Walking Dead is that it makes it feel like your choices have consequence, even if they don't. That it seems like the opposite thing that you would have chosen is so different that it seems like you're going off in a very specific direction. And in some cases you are, but in a lot of ways, Walking Dead, I remember after there's one point where a character in that game just dies out of nowhere. And I went back and I was like, I didn't want him to die. How can I save him? And it was like, oh, you can't. That's not a choice. You could do anything. You can make any previous decision, and that character's still going to die. Maybe Mario. I don't know. I'm trying to think of. Honestly, I don't necessarily think that a lot of game franchises need to die. I just want people to start making new games instead of... I'd settle for sequels to existing franchises if they would just stop making the fucking rehashes, the re-release, HD up-res re-releases. So,
yeah.
All right, next one comes in from Ryan, and Ryan says, howdy, Selectors of Rage, and he says, I've got a question for Jeff. But Nick, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but you can answer if you have. You've often talked about your love for Dune and how making a film based on it seems doomed from the start, but I don't believe I've ever heard your thoughts on the miniseries of it or its sequel, Children of Dune. So what do you think about them? And just so I don't leave out whichever honored guest is banning the stage this week, here's a more general question. Which books would you like to see turned into not a movie, but a miniseries? Something Penis God, Wreck-It Ryan T. Brace. Are you a fan of Dune, Nick?
I've never actually seen it.
Okay.
So I guess this question is directly to you.
Yeah. I think that I've seen the miniseries. I think that it's good. It's closer to what I imagine coming out of the book, but it does suffer a little bit from early 2000s sci-fi miniseries bad special effects syndrome.
Right.
Because it is a series that was made for, I believe it's for the Sci-Fi Channel. I don't like the guy who plays Paul Muad'Dib in there very much. I think it's also not quite dirty or harsh enough, in my opinion. I've watched the sequel a few times, and I like it. I mean, I don't have any serious problems with it. I don't really generally tend to get upset anymore when they fuck up an adaptation of something that I like, because it's happened so many freaking times that it's hard to say. But I mean, I don't know. I'd probably rather watch the miniseries than the David Lynch movie, because after getting so into the books, the Lynch movie it's okay. It's just a different take. It's just all over the goddamn place. So I think it's all right. But as far as the other question, let's see. What books would you like to see turned into a miniseries? Nick, what do you think? You got a book that you'd like to see?
No, not really. If you were asking me this, tomorrow or something like that, I would have come up with an answer. But no, I can't think of the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You got an answer?
Actually, there's a few. I know that Sci-Fi is actually making. Looks like this year. Somebody mentioned this, and it just triggered it in my brain. But there's a franchise called The Expanse. It's written by this guy named James. Well, it's a writing team, but the pseudonym is James S.A. Corey. That I really like that they're making a sci-fi series or miniseries based off of, which I think sounds really interesting. Whether it ends up working out or not, the first book in Expanse is really, really strange, and I don't know if it's going to translate, but we'll see. I think that a lot of William Gibson's books could be adapted. The Neuromancer universe could work perfectly well as a sci-fi type of thing. I mean, I think there's a lot of sci-fi out there that would probably work. Dan Simmons' Hyperion might work, but that's because that might actually really work, because it's got the first Hyperion book has a very Lost-like structure where each chapter they got a bunch of people and they're going towards a destination, but then every chapter they're flashing back to the stories as the people on this journey tell their individual stories to each other, which would be kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't know. There's plenty of stuff out there that could totally work for that. All right, let's see. We've got, I'm going to call it 2 more questions that we're going to be done here. This next one is from, oh boy, Bo the Buddha. Okay, he's got his real name on here, but I'm almost certainly would manhandle it, so we're going to go with Bo the Buddha. He says, Almighty Dong Whisperers, I bring upon you the following veiny questions. What is your favorite gaming trend? And by that I mean a certain reoccurring game mechanic or a specific enemy type, story formula, or even setting. Basically anything that has been put into games all the time by different developers. For me, my favorite gaming trend must be the classic recurring zombies, because no matter what the genre is, the developers have found a way to shoehorn them into the game. It always brings a smile to my face because of the fun ways you can wreck their decaying bodies. Rage on, you dong worm riding shaft wielders. Okay. Best wishes, Bo the Buddha. And he says, P.S. Jeff, you inspired me to rock a full frontal beard assault. Good job. Grow some facial hair.
Okay. There must be, a callback to one of your early videos.
Well, I have a beard, so sometimes people like that, and then they'll grow one of their own. So I don't know.
All right.
Anyway, so what do you think? Reoccurring game mechanic. Favorite reoccurring game mechanic. Story, formula, setting. Meh, 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 meh.
I don't know. I think I got two. I think one is the cover healing system, which I am very happy for now because I used to hate it when I was playing a game and then I'll be on like 1% health and I'd be trying to find that health pack somewhere and I'd always get shot and having to reload again and again and again. I guess another one would be radio stations in video games, that sandbox games.
Okay.
Because like they are usually like really, really funny. Like playing either Vampire the Masquerade or I don't know, any of the Grand Theft Auto games. Like they just help make that game feel more alive.
Okay. Yeah, it totally makes sense. I think that I've really enjoyed over the last few years the amount of cosmetic alteration that they've put into a lot of games, whether it's full on being able to make your own character or whether it's just changing up your clothes, changing up your gun types, or just the way that they look. I really like being able to very much customize my character. I mean, I don't, even if they don't look like me or if they're just completely something else, I like being able to kind of make my own, like Sunset Overdrive, for example, on the Xbox One. It really wasn't necessary for them to make that game, to put all the other junk in that game of clothes and hairstyles and body types and stuff like that, but they did, and I thought it was really fun. That, and man, I'm a sucker, as I've said a million times before. I'm a sucker for a really expansive, open-ended upgrade system that really lets you. I mean, for me, I feel like so much of what we're getting we got out of the last generation, and I see seem to be seeing more of it going into the current generation, maybe, is the ability to really make the character that you want to make and to play the game the way that you want to play it. So I'm a big sucker for games like you mentioned Deus Ex before, about Deus Ex, where it's like, oh, do you want to be a sneaky guy? You could be a sneaky guy. Do you want to be just shooting guys? Oh, you could do that. Do you want to do this way? Do you want to do this way? So games that give you the ability to play in a few different ways are always, I find that to be fantastic. And I just like the fact that it seems like there's a lot more sophistication, that kind of RPG elements seem to be bleeding into other games a little bit more. So all that means that I'm able to really kind of customize my own gameplay experience in a way that gives me a real sense of power, and I really enjoy that. So, all right. Well, we've got one more, and this last one. This last one is directed at me, but I'm going to let us both answer this question, Nick. All right?
Okay.
Here we go. All right. To Jeff and Nick. This is a scenario, so stick with me here. You could have a life of you could live a life of complete luxury, free from worry and with limitless wealth. But in exchange, you have to be willing to submit yourself to an agreement. The agreement would be to allow yourself to be the pleasure slave for an amorous, curvaceous, vivacious, and gloriously and generously well-endowed rancor femme fatale. In the course of your duties, you will be provided with a wetsuit and a flashlight to be used as needed. So, will you submit yourself before this mighty beauty and live a life of infamy as the gamer geek who plundered the treasure cave of the untamable rancor femme and escaped with her heart? Or will you stay meek and unnoticed as you are and be counted among the legions of the mighty Lord Dogacles? If you should decline, I feel this would be a shame in the eyes of the Dawn Lord, whose commandment of go forth and bone all you will be dismaying. So what say you, O wise bearded soothsayer? Humbly, Kyros. He says, P.S. Before you answer, just think of the tits. Those would be some mighty globes of mammary delight. So what do you say, Nick? You got a life of, just a free chance to do whatever you want and to have anything that you would want in life, but in return, let's say once a week, you got to get it on with
No. My question was gonna be: do I have to do this once in my entire life, or do I have to do this regularly?
No, because he says you'd be a pleasure slave for an amorous, curvaceous, vivacious.
You can be a pleasure slave once, during that time, I am yours to do what you want with.
Well, come on, that's easy. I think we'd all take a trip into the Rancor hoo-ha if it meant
just doing it once.
Doing it once, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think if we were just doing it once, then yes, I would. I would get absolutely wasted drunk or like high as a kite, so I don't even remember that I was actually there, and I wouldn't be scarred by the experience. But if I have to do it all the time, then
what's the minimum amount of time? What's the minimum amount of time between encounters? Let's quote encounters that you would need.
No. Minimum
Once a
time
year.
would be once. No, once, because then I could use the money to get sessions with a psychiatrist to talk over my traumatic experience with the Rancor.
Once a year. You're saying that for the ability to never want for anything for the rest of your life. Once a year. Once a year.
No, not once a year. Once ever.
Okay. Well,
just so because after that I'm going to be so fucked up in the head that I wouldn't be able to continue.
Come on. You know that after, like, let's say that this happened like once a day, right? Okay. All right. Okay. Now stick with me here. This happened once a day. At the end of maybe 6 months at the latest, it's going to be no thing. You're just going to be like, well, it's 4:00. All right, come on. Let's do it. Just get your Rancor down. Take it off. It's fine.
But that would dominate your life. I mean, like, think about it. You're with a girl that you really like. And she's like, listen, tomorrow, would you mind meeting my parents? And be like, I can't. I could go fuck a Rancor.
Okay.
Can we do something? Can we do something afterwards?
As opposed to, hey, Nick, I've got this crazy new solution for you. Hey, do you want to come meet my parents tomorrow? No, I'm busy. How about at 6 p.m. instead of 4? I need to take a shower. Oh, my God, problem solved, right? Because I'm telling you, man, after a certain amount of time, you're just going to be like, it's time to fuck the Rancor. I mean, yeah. Eventually.
What would your answer be?
Sure, I don't care. I'm getting any anyway. I don't care.
You're such a whore. You're such a whore.
Yeah, I could get all the therapy I need for unlimited money. I could fill my days with, hookers and blow, and then, once a day. I'll go with maximum once a week, right? Once a week, sure. Absolutely. Why not? There's way worse problems to have in life than, oh my God, I've got to fuck a monster. Especially, I mean, the way he's writing it, the monster sounds nice. She sounds like a nice monster. So, if she's real shitty, I mean, and if I don't have to have a bunch of, it's like I have to live with this monster, but if I have to drive to her house once a week and she's nice and, she wants to do a little monster loving.
The monster sounds nice because he's fucking selling it. He wants you to have sex with this monster.
Well, then I'm going to need to see a picture. Pics or it didn't happen.
No, don't trust those profile pictures because they're always misleading.
I'm going to need to see a monster selfie before I get in on this. All right. Well, with that classy answer, we're done with the show for this week. Thanks to everybody for emailing in, and keep emailing me. Like I said, if I don't answer your question, you can email it again. Sometimes I got to skip over them. Sometimes they're just questions that we've either answered a bunch of times before, or I feel like they aren't going to. Somebody sent me an email this week saying, like, do you only read questions that or on topics that you agree with, or only ones that are funny? Generally only ones that are funny. I mean, monster fucking. That's good, right? So send in your questions to mail@rageselect.com. Is mail@rageselect.com. And Nick, thank you so much for being on. Had a good time. So we're going to wrap it up, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me on.
Yep.